Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is a review of the 1986 anime Fist of the North Star. Now, this is one of those animes that is considered a classic by a lot of different people. And I'm not what you would call an anime connoisseur. I haven't seen that many anime, but I will say this. After seeing this really leaped to the top of my list. It's spin kicked its way up there. I absolutely loved this film. I thought this film was great. I thought this was an awesome, kick-ass anime with some great fights, so with some really dynamic direction, with this just chaotic, just frenetic energy that could easily have blown up and completely and totally backfired, but wound up enhancing the film in so many different ways. It's one of those animes that I 100% agree with a lot of the praise that this film gets. And I'm not even really, like I said, I'm not an anime connoisseur. I've only seen a handful of anime. So that could mean that this isn't as impressive as some of the other anime because I haven't seen that many. But I will say this: I thought this was better than Ghost in the Shell. I know that that's also gotten a lot of praise, and I didn't really, to be perfectly honest, I didn't really get it. But with this movie, I get it. I get it and then some. So, Fist of the North Star is directed by Toyoo Ashida. I thought he did a fantastic job directing this film. Direction in anime and animation is a different medium than live action. So, it's not necessarily the same sort of thing, but a good director is still very uh, useful. It's useful in animation every bit as much as it is in live action, and in some ways, animation directing or anime directing can be even more difficult because you don't really have the benefit of your typical crew. You don't really have a cinematographer. A lot of it's just on you. Even though there is a cinematographer, Tomiko Hosoda, but cinematography in an anime is really not the same sort of thing either. So, in a lot of ways, when it comes to shooting an anime, you wind up with a finished product that really has your fingerprints all over it. Even more so than maybe even your typical production from even the most auteur of directors in Hollywood when it comes to a live action film. And that the right or wrong director can definitely make or break an anime, just like it could make or break any film. And I thought Toyoo was definitely the right guy for the job. Did an equally as impressive job with the action sequences and the fights and the sheer spectacle of it all versus the other more subtle moments, the moments in the film that are trying to be more poignant or heartfelt or emotional or have some kind of dramatic touch. And the film looks great. I mean, from a visual perspective, it really does. It has this epic look and feel and atmosphere to it, and it just fits it so well because it's an epic tale. This film, in a lot of ways, it's Mad Max on steroids. You have a loner hero who fights for the people as well as for himself. You have these roving bands of marauders and villains that he has to fight and stay one step ahead of, and so on and so forth. you and what I mean by being on steroids, everyone's all jacked up. They look like they stole Bane's venom. You know, they're all just fucking ripped to the gills, just absolutely built like brick shit houses with like just tons of fucking muscles and sinew on top. And there's even characters that are just are like seem like 10 feet tall. They're like giants. So yeah, it really is Mad Max on steroids. It takes place in a post-apocalyptic wasteland as well, uh, and it's a lot of fun. That's another thing about this movie. It's a lot of fun, especially when it comes to the fight scenes where they're using their powers and their abilities. Kenshiro's punching somebody and their head is bulging and then their head explodes and brain matter flies everywhere, or you know, punches a guy and blood sprays out of his chest and then his chest explodes and then there's guts and flying everywhere. It's every bit as satisfying in animation as it is in live action when it comes to the gore. I mean, this film is gory as hell, and it's a shame though. I will say this, and this isn't really the film's fault. It's a shame though that the gore scenes, a lot of them are shot in this weird. They have this weird filter over them that makes it look like it's a VHS rip. That really is jarring when it's intermixed with the HD sort of remastered picture of the film. Because I have the DVD, but I checked out the Blu-ray rip for this review. And it's a really good looking transfer, except for that stuff. But I don't think that's really, they didn't really have much of an option or much of a choice because initially they shot it without any of these filters, but freaking parents got pissed off and thought that it was too violent and were causing a stink and a stir, and so they ended up putting that filter over it. So that's why you don't really have totally uncensored kills in this movie, because of the Parents Council. Just goes to show you the Parents Council exists all over the world, not just in America. It also had its foothold in Japan as well. So yeah, that's a bummer, but you still get to see quite a bit. There's still quite a bit of blood and carnage and guts and just absolute fucking craziness. Uh, it's written by Susumu Takashiya, and I've never read the Fist of the North Star manga by Tetsuo Hara, so I can't really say for sure whether it's a good adaptation of it or not. I know that there was a TV series before this, but the TV series had like black blood and was like it was really censored in comparison to this movie. I've heard mixed things about it. I don't know. I mean, I did like this film a lot, but I don't know if I'd really be that interested in the TV show. Maybe someday down the road. And I know there's some other spin-offs of this, or prequels, or new adaptations that were made years later. But for right now, I'm fine with just this particular anime. Um, there are multiple different dubs for this film. There's the original Japanese dub, which is what I listened to. That's the version that I saw, and then there's the English dub by Streamline that they did in 1991. And I can't really say that much about the English dub because I didn't actually watch the English version. I started out watching the English dub, and then I really could not handle the incredibly corny narration in the beginning, so I switched to the Japanese dub, and the Japanese dub was a lot better, and also the Japanese sound mix is fucking insanely good. Like the 5.1 surround sound or whatever, Dolby Digital, whatever it is some of the best sound mixes. It's one of the best sound mixes I've ever heard for anything animated that I've ever seen. Like, it is that impressive. It is really good, and that's on the Blu-ray. So it's a really great sound mix. It's just absolutely terrific. It really is. It just takes the film to a whole other level because it's just this just sonic barrage of awesomeness that just ties in with everything that you're seeing on the screen. It really does immerse you in the film in a way that very few animated sound mixes do. But you going back to the script by Susumu Takashiya, I don't know if some of these elements are the results of it just adapting the source material directly, or some things where they change some things around. That being said, for the most part, I think it's a good script. Uh, there are some characters that seem a little extraneous, like the kids. I didn't really think they were really necessary, and I didn't really honestly care for the kids. The only scene that I liked the kids in was this really exciting, thrilling car chase that the kids had, where they were in this buggy and they were being chased by these marauders, and they were jumping through skyscrapers and doing all that. It was a really fun sequence. It was very inventive, very creative. It was the kind of thing that you would see in a Fast and the Furious sequel, but this was happening in 1986. Um, Other than that sequence, though, I didn't really think the kids were really that necessary. I honestly found some of them were kind of annoying. Was Bat and Ray? Yeah, I didn't really care for those characters, but that's just me personally. And I didn't really like how in this anime there's all this build up to this confrontation between Kenshiro and the man Shin that he viewed as a brother to him, and it was a longtime friend who betrayed him and stole the love of his life from him and left him for dead. And he's the one that has caused him all this strife. The whole film is all about Kenshiro trying to find his love again. He's trying to reunite with Yuria, and he meets with Shin, and there's no fight. There's no final showdown. Shin's already been attacked by the what is eventually turns into the main villain, Rao, and Shin just dies from wounds caused by Rao. And it's like, well, that's a letdown. Like, what is that? If there's one thing that the live action film got right, it's the confrontation between Shin. It's taken away Rao, who is a pretty cool character, I have to be honest. But in a live action way, it would not have worked because there's no way they could have pulled that off. So they combined elements of Rao and Shin together into one Shin character, and I thought that wasn't really that bad of a choice, and in a lot of ways it really enhanced and improved the overall the battle with Shin, because in this film it's one of the most disappointing things. It's all this build up to nothing. There's no payoff, so that's extremely disappointing. Even though I really like the film, it is a disappointing a way to end that conflict, because the whole film is leading up to that. It's not leading up to the fight between Rao and Kenshiro, even though they actually are brothers by blood. But it's not really leading up to that, though. It's leading up to the the confrontation with Shin, and then it does nothing with it. The live action film does a much better job because the whole climax is that fight. But that's just me personally. I know other people probably might not really have that big of a deal with it, but might not find it to be that much of a problem. But I didn't really care for the way that they handled that. I also didn't really care for the way that Rao is just. There's the final fight between. See, this is the thing. This is I really like this film. I thought it was great for the most part. It was a lot of fun. The blood and the guts and the carnage and the craziness is right up my alley, and it went by at a pretty good pace for the most part, despite its long running time. But when you got to the climax, it just felt like it was lacking something. A lot of it, I think, it was lacking uh, that satisfying feeling that you get with a really amazing and powerful climax in an anime, let alone any film. And here you have two letdowns on top of each other. You have the Shin conflict that never really resolves itself. There's never really any final blow off. There's really not much of a fight. There's really not much of anything. And then you have the fight with Rao and Kenshiro, and it I guess it ends in a draw. I guess, and that's just not very satisfying. I mean, and I don't think it even ends in a draw. Rao, he ends up knocking Kenshiro out. He's out cold on the concrete, if I remember correctly, or he's left for dead. But Rao just gets a change of heart and decides to let him live, or I guess he realizes that he's going to live, and he's fine with that. And then he just goes off to who knows where else. I guess that's, like I said, this might actually be how it is in the manga, and if it is, please feel free to correct me. But it just makes for a really unsatisfying climax, because it's like, oh, here's the final fight, and Kenshiro doesn't really necessarily kick his ass. He's the one that gets his ass kicked, and he's knocked out. And I guess there was another version of the film which had both of them still standing. I actually kind of like that better than just having Kenshiro just, knocked out. Because it's one of those things. If there was a satisfying final showdown between Shin and Kenshiro before this, then I could deal with whatever they did with Rao. I could deal with that, and it wouldn't be as big of a problem for me, because because the real battle, the real final battle, the one that had the most stakes, was against Shin in the first place. This was just another battle against like a bigger opponent. This was like the film giving you the go home, grand, just big, climactic final fight. Essentially the final boss battle. That's really what it is. So I would have been okay if it wasn't really as good as the Shin and Kenshiro fight was. But that's not what happened. Both of them were disappointing. Both of them were lackluster. So that just made the last 10-15 minutes kind of fall a little flat in some ways, at least for me personally. That being said, there's still a lot to love, let alone like, about this movie. I even really like the score for the most part. I loved the 80s AOR style songs that were in the soundtrack. Heart of Darkness, I really like that one. Purple Eyes is good too. The thing is, it's talking about purple eyes, and in the footage, in the animation that you see, Yuria does not have purple eyes. I think she has blue eyes. So it's talking about purple eyes, and there's no purple eye. Nobody has any purple eyes in any of these scenes. So I don't. So maybe I'm missing it. Maybe I don't get what they're trying to go for. But yeah, it's one of those, kind of moments. But yeah, the score by it's not listing who did the score, but either way, it had a really good score, I thought. And okay, there it is. Katsu Isha Hattori, who did the score. It's well edited too by Masaki Hanai, and yeah, there's a lot of just great edits in this that really do make the scenes pop and really makes things flow really well. And the animation is so well done. It's very fluid, despite the fact that things are just absolutely crazy in this movie. There's crazy levels of speed in terms of motion. There's of course, the carnage, the heads exploding and all that other stuff. So there's a lot of things in this particular film that really require some fluid animation, and things could have really just completely imploded, but that didn't happen because the animation is awesome. It really is. It's some awesome animation by Toei. Toei. I don't. I'm not Japanese. I probably butchered it, but yeah, Toei Animation, and the voice acting. Like I said, it's also good. Akira Kamiya as Kenshiro, Yuriko Yamamoto is Yuria, Rao, Kenji Utsumi, Yagi, Chikao Ōtsuka, Shins played by Toshio Furukawa, and then have Rei, played by Kaneto Shiozawa. I didn't really care for Rei, but I'm not gonna blame the voice actress. And then there's a few other actors and voice actors and actresses, but those are the main characters. In terms of other things I want to mention, there's another thing, like I didn't really. There's this whole thing about flowers and stuff like that, and it gets a little preachy, and maybe that's not the right word for it, but I don't know. It just didn't really register with me that strongly. It's another corny aspect of the film I didn't care for. But like I said, these are only the problems I have with the movie are few. It's only stuff like I didn't care for certain characters. I didn't like the way that the climax played out. I didn't care for the sappier, cornier kind of stuff in the overall story. The story is very simple. It's like beat 'em up. It's Mad Max on steroids in a post-apocalyptic wasteland beat 'em up. Revenge story. You got Kenshiro, who was in love with and infatuated with Yuria, and Rao, and essentially Rao was the one who convinces his friend Shin to take Yuria away from Kenshiro by force, and essentially mortally wounds Kenshiro. Kenshiro takes away his girl Yuria, and then Rao tries to finish off Kenshiro, but it doesn't work. As years pass, Kenshiro comes back to life and becomes a fighter for the people, for the ideals of a better world, of a greener world, with flowers and trees and all that nice stuff. And along the way, he kicks a lot of ass, takes a lot of names, makes people explode, and I guess saves the world from darkness. That's honestly kind of the gist of what is going on. Is this? It's the world has embraced the darkness. That's why you have Ryu, who's like this big dark lord of a character, who has decided to take over the land, and yeah, he has a name too, and I'm trying to remember what his other name is, because I know, because it's a pretty cool nickname that he had, but for some reason that's not coming into my head. But people can feel free to let me know what his nickname is, because it's just not popping in there right now. But anyway, I do remember it being pretty cool. And there's a lot of really inventive stuff in this. Like, for instance, the design of Rao's men, they really look like Jason Voorhees. They look like the foot soldiers with Jason masks and like red eyes. So the Jason masks are spray painted black and they got red eyes. So that was a pretty cool, striking image and cool design for them. And then there's various different ways that people explode. So there are things where people's head explodes, or people's chests or other body parts. Kenshiro fights different kinds of opponents. Like there's this big, like huge, like fat guy who uses his fats as a shield, and a lot of attacks bounce off it, and so on and so forth. And his skin is his armor, and Kenshiro finds a way to get underneath the fat and kill him. There's another guy who can turn his entire body into metal, and Rao kills him in a very memorable fashion. There's a lot of fun stuff like that throughout the movie. Different types of opponents, different types of ways that Kenshiro dispatches them, and most of them are definitely very satisfying and really cool. But yeah, I don't really know what else to say about Fist of the North Star that most people already haven't said about this film. I would definitely recommend it if you're a fan of martial arts, if you're a fan of, science fiction, post-apocalyptic wasteland movies. Definitely give it a watch. If it sounds interesting to you in any way, definitely see it at least once. Even if you're not really that big of a fan of anime, I still would recommend it because I'm not really that big into anime either, and I really enjoyed it. So, yeah. As always, thanks for watching my review, and I'll see you later. See ya.